Okie doke. Right, here we are at module number 15, the last module for this course. The final picture of the week. And this chapter covers the main reason for our existence as cybersecurity professionals, even though we like to think as techs that the reason for our existence is to keep things secure. It really comes down to, can we save the bottom dollar? We have to be able to talk like the C-suites, be able to talk like those who control the money. Because IT and everything within it is really more of an expense than it is a profit. So we have to consistently justify ourselves to the accountants, to the C-suites in order to keep our job. And the way that we do that is by being able to measure risk, knowing what threats are being faced and assess those risks. For example, strategic, compliance, financial, operational, technical, and managerial. Once the threats to assets has been determined, we must look at the risks these assets face. Testing is identifying the vulnerabilities. This can be done by means such as pen testing, which should have legal authorization before conducting. Modifications to systems such as new equipment, parts, devices should be kept any changes should be kept in a tracking method called change management. Data should be classified depending on the sensitivity of the information. The government uses top secret, secret, confidential, and unclassified. And any change to data in regards to those levels should also be recorded. Privilege management is the process via audit to periodically review user privileges to objects. Incident management is part of this process, and we talked about that earlier. An organization that can accurately calculate risk is better prepared to address those risks. Two approaches to this are the qualitative and the quantitative risk. In qualitative, we use an educated guess based on observations, ranking the frequency of attacks from high risk to low risk with a numerical value of like 1 to 10, or a label, high, medium, or low. In quantitative, we use the likelihood and impact of a risk being successful. The risk likelihood is calculated by the mean time between failures, or MTBF, the mean time to recovery, or MTTR, the mean time to failure, MTTF, and failure in time. This data can be used to determine the annualized rate of occurrence. These acronyms that I just mentioned show up in the security test, or Security Plus test. Risk impact is done by comparing impact to monetary loss with an asset to determine the cost that represents how much money would be lost if the risk occurred. There are three variables that you need: the ARO, the asset value, or AV, and the exposure factor, EF. The first important calculation that you need to know for the test is the single loss expectancy. So for example, if a building with a value of $10 million, of which 75% is likely to be destroyed in a tornado, then the single loss expectancy is that? $7.5 million. The annual loss of expectancy is the expected monetary loss in a 1-year period. So it is calculated like that. So for example, if flood insurance data suggests that a serious flood is likely to occur 1 in 100 years, then our ARO is 0.01 or 1/100th. The ALE will be calculated like this. Risk must be represented in a variety of ways in order to educate the concerned parties. You could use things like register matrices or risk matrices as shown here. Risk can be reduced by a number of security controls. For example, administrative, developing and ensuring policies and procedures that are carried out by users, things that users can do and things that users cannot. The deterrent, discourage security violations before they occur, like a sign. Preventative, prevent the threat from coming in contact with the vulnerability, such as having a firewall or having an air-gapped network. Physical, security in a defined structure and location, such as doors, locks, man traps, and so on. Detective, identify any threat that has reached the system using things like IDSs. Compensating, provide an alternative to normal controls that for some reason cannot be used, such as load balancing. And corrective, mitigate damage caused by the incident. Risk can also be distributed or spread through transference, risk avoidance, and mitigation. Technology can help with change and reducing risk. For example, through automation, devices can self-act, operate, heal, and regulate without any user interaction. Automation allows for the scalability and elasticity. Making templates and master copies of systems will ensure, should something go wrong with a particular device, we can restore it quickly to an operational state. An important means of reducing risk is through a security policy. A policy is a document that outlines specific requirements or rules that must be met. This is different from a standard that is a collection of requirements specific to the system or a procedure that must be met by everyone. A guideline is a collection of suggestions that should be implemented but cannot be enforced. Three policies that you find in most places are the acceptable use policy, personal email policy, and social media policy. Of the key defenses against threat is continuous security awareness and training. All users need to be continuously trained in the new security defenses and reminded of company security policies and procedures. Some ideal opportunities can be when a new employee is hired, after a computer attack occurred, when a new employee is promoted or given new responsibilities, annual department retreats, new software installed, or new hardware upgraded. Agreements are formal contractual relationships as they relate to security policies and procedures. Agreements security professionals should be well acquainted with are the service level agreement, the blanket purchase agreement, the memorandum of understanding, interconnection security agreement, and non-disclosure agreements. Risk can be reduced by having procedures that affect the hiring and termination of personnel, such as background checks and exit interviews. And lastly, security professionals should have the knowledge to troubleshoot common security issues, such as access violations, asset management, authentication issues, baseline deviations, certificate issues, data exfiltration, license compliance violation, logs and event anomalies, misconfigured devices, permission issues, personnel issues, unauthorized software, unencrypted credentials, and weak security configurations. Believe it or not, we have covered in the last 15 weeks all those subjects. And all those subjects you will see in the exam. With that, we have reached the end of all the lectures. What I would like to remind you at this time is that the final assignment for this week isn't really an assignment. It's more of a reminder to prep yourself for the 501 exam. There is no real thing that you have to turn in this week. We are 7 days away from when everything is due. So I didn't really want to give you another thing to do besides the usual quiz. There is the final project. The service is up. You are able to log in to it and add questions. And somebody asked me what the minimum number of questions is, and it is 20. Don't forget to also submit your entries for Pacific Hackers and OWASP. If you submit 1 out of 4, then you get 20 points. If you submit all 4, you get 80 points. If you played NCL, don't forget to submit that for points. And anything else. As shown in that time and date thing that I have running, that I take pictures of every other day. At the time of this recording, we are 7 days and 9 hours away from everything being due. Anything from module 1 all the way to the end, everything is due. Tuesday, May 18th at 11:59 p.m. with no penalties. Any questions for me? Okay, well, seeing none, it was great hanging out with you guys. I know it's not ideal doing this all online. Cabrillo is set to do another round of completely online courses in the fall with a return to in-person spring of 22. I'm kind of thinking that by the fall, I'll start doing office hours around the college, like at a coffee shop or something, so we can at least start meeting up. But I'll put that info on Discord as we get closer to the fall semester. So please submit anything that you have missing in before the semester is over so that you don't get a bad grade. Remember that I don't dot any points for late submission, as long as it's before this countdown reaches 0. And hope you guys have a wonderful summer, and hopefully we'll see you in the fall and in other classes.